When the Catholics began assembling their Bibles, they picked up a collection of Jewish scriptures, a Jewish Bible, which contained books that your modern Protestant Bibles don't have. And these would be Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, and 1st and 2nd Maccabees. And it's not that the Catholics added these books in. They were in the collection that they had. So they were translated into Latin and they were used by the Catholics. Well, later, after the Catholics had their own canon, which the whole idea of religious text being canonical and non-canonical is actually a Christian idea. The Jews didn't have that idea. It didn't really exist in their time. So later, a group of Jews called the Masoretes, they liked the idea of a definitive work of Scripture that the Christians had been using. So they decided to create their own Jewish Bible. And this would be a definitive work. The books contained in it would be considered canonical. Any scriptures that were not contained in it would be considered unimportant or non-canonical. And so they gathered up a bunch of books again. So there had been several collections of Jewish scripture before, including like the Septuagint. But in this case, around the late 6th or early 7th century AD, the Masoretes, they make another collection, and they consider this to be the definitive Hebrew Bible. And they collect these books, and for whatever reason, those 7 books I just mentioned were not included. It may have just been because they didn't have access to them. They had kind of been scattered throughout the Mediterranean world, and they weren't really in the best condition at that time. History had not been kind to them. So they may have just not had those books just because of their own circumstances. But for whatever reason, those books did not make it into that particular collection. Now, this collection is what was later chosen by King James when he was creating his version of the Bible. He didn't pick any of the other collections, such as the Vulgate that the Catholics used, or the Septuagint that some of the other Jews had been using. Instead, he picked up a copy of the Masoretic text and decided that is what would be used because he thought it actually was authoritative. He may not have realized that it was a product of the 7th century, or he probably just didn't care. It wasn't what the Catholics used, and that was good enough for him. And so this collection, which I think the one he had came from the 12th or 13th century, is what was used to create the Old Testament for the King James Bible. Other Protestant groups would then follow his example and use those same sources, these later sources that did not include those other 7 books. And so every Protestant Bible that came out since then lacked the books that the earlier version that the Catholics used had included. Now, as far as which of these is correct, well, different sects use different scriptures, and so the 7 extra books is correct for Catholics, and the exclusion of those 7 books is correct for Protestants. So there you go.